Uganda. Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hotseat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners, across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Amara, and Happy New Year, Uganda. There's a big summit is coming to Kampala. The African Union Commission is organizing the summit. It's the extraordinary summit on Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, CADIP. And we'll be looking into this summit in agriculture. What is Uganda likely to benefit from this? Because we have seen similar summits in Maputo, we have seen similar summits in Malabo, and now we are here in Kampala. Yes, it's a good thing it's happening in Kampala. We could have some dividends in hosting the summit. But thereafter, how can Africa really, benefit from a summit like this? And my guest this evening is a woman of substance who understands agriculture like the back of her hand, very passionate about the area, very passionate about food security, and I'm sure she's so much involved in this CADIP summit. My guest this evening was made it on time is Agnes Kirao from Food Race Alliance. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, Agnes.
Good evening, Patrick, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year, Agnes.
To you and to the listeners as well.
You look like a real delegate going to the African Summit Conference.
Indeed, I'm a delegate.
Yeah.
Indeed, I'm one.
So, how's 2024 like for you? And I'm sure have you already made your resolutions for 25? Do you normally get them right when you make resolutions?
Yeah.
Okay, you're lucky then.
No, it's about understanding yourself and the resources before you and your capacities, but of course with your faith. Many of us make resolutions without a basis. You're not moving from step A to step B. People just wake up and make resolutions going somewhere. So I'm a systemic person, I'm a logical person, and I'm a woman of faith.
So you pull out something that you think you can work on and
yes,
achieve.
Because I put into
work hard and pray hard
and pray hard about it.
Okay.
Work hard, harness all the opportunities and the resources that are at my disposal. And yeah, maybe I'm not ambitious enough, but
it's going to be a very, very busy kind of year because politics is coming in. People are going to the Ugandans ask for a mandate to lead in different capacities. Mm-hmm. That alone, also sometimes it could slow business in other sectors. But for those who are seeking leadership, maybe it could just give them an office.
It speeds up things for them. 2024 was a very hectic year because we were working on two critical frameworks. We had the National Development Plan 4. The development process was in 2024, the peak of it. Mm-hmm. Many people think that when Cabinet approves the strategic direction, things are done. They are not done yet. Actually, much more work starts. So we had that process that is slowly curving, closing up at the national level, but at the same time opening up at ministerial departments and agencies and at district local government. So it was quite a lot of work.
To do.
But at the same time, we were working to conclude the Malabo CADIP declaration and also preparing the Kampala declaration. Okay, so it was another piece of work.
Is it already a declaration, the Kampala one? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's get into this. This CADIP summit, building resilient agro-food systems. What are your... Okay, take us back to Malabo. So, Maputo, Malabo, and now Kampala.
Mm-hmm. I think many people who have been keen on the issues of agriculture and food security, you may not have missed referencing Maputo, the yes. Maputo Declaration, and reminding our government all the time. I think what has been standing out prominently is the allocation of 10% of the national budget to agriculture. In Maputo, those were the two targets that the governments, heads of governments and states committed themselves to, allocating 10% of their national budgets to agriculture, and at the same time making sure that we achieve 6% annual growth. The assumption and thinking then was, if we achieve these two, then we are going to harvest so many people out of poverty. because the majority of the people in Africa are engaged in agriculture.
Is there any country that has been able to actually put in practice the 10% investment in agriculture of their budget?
Yes, there are several countries, but unfortunately, that did not necessarily translate in the transformation that they inspired to see, the change that they wanted to see, the poverty reduction they wanted to see, the food security they wanted to see. But countries, surprisingly, like Burundi, is one of those countries
that put 10%,
more than 10%. So when the decade of Maputo expired in 2013, heads of governments and states thought it prudent not to call it done, but to renew their commitment. And this time round, there was a lot of taking stock of what had happened in the previous decade, after realizing that allocating resources...
The appraisal results in Malabo must have been very poor.
The Maputo ones...
Yeah, because Malabo was supposed to appraise Maputo.
Yes,
and I'm thinking the results of the appraisal must have been very poor in Malabo.
There was a lot of confusion and people didn't know exactly, because we know that achieving total agricultural transformation, food security and nutrition, there are quite a number of moving pieces that are going into it. And therefore, in Malabo, heads of states and governments thought that they needed to be more practical, considering that in Maputo, the Maputo Declaration, it made a lot of assumptions and it was in abstract.
Okay, if I may, Agnes, for the case of Uganda, from Maputo Declaration, did we make an attempt to raise at least percentage points from, I think, 2 point something to 3? Where do we stand? Have we seen countries make some progress towards the 10%?
Actually, we have not done so as Uganda. I must declare, we have never, I think we only...
Then this summit should have gone to Bujumbura. Anyway.
It is quite a lot that goes to it, because we don't rule out the issues of politics, the geopolitics and, the powers that be around that. So when we went to Malabo in 2014, then the thinking was, let us be a little bit more practical. Let us break down this whole transformation. What are these critical areas that we must do something about? And what are the indicators that will show that actually we are on progress, or we are not on progress, or we are not doing anything? But also the other thing that came out is that we need an accountability framework. We need to assess performance. We are not going to wait to the end of the decade and say, Uganda, Kenya, where are you? Where are you? So this time around, they put an assessment framework called the biennial review reporting mechanism, scientifically done with indicators that are measurable, with weights. And countries were supposed to start by assessing themselves how they are performing on this particular commitments. We had 7 commitment areas. Remember, in Maputo, we only had 2. Okay. Now in Malabo, we are having 7 of them with performance indicators. And then, we started moving. After 2 years, we would submit reports. And of course, it is very interesting if you have been part of this process. The first 2 reports, really, the technical teams and the entire secretariat were a little bit strict, and you would see that many of the countries we are not on track.
But let me ask, what kind of report? Because you either put in the money in your budget, which is evident, everybody can find out, or you did.
That is one commitment area of increasing financing, both public and private.
Because this was a huge commitment.
It was a very huge commitment. And then we had a commitment on ending hunger and all forms of malnutrition. Of course, commitment number 1 was recommitting yourselves to the cadre principles, putting in place the legal policy and those things, the structures. And then commitment number 2 was about increasing private and public financing to agriculture. And then we had commitment number 3, which was on ending hunger and all forms of malnutrition. We had commitment number 4 of boosting intra-Africa trade. I know my trade guru is here, will tell us how we are doing that. Then we had commitment, number 5, that was on resilience production. And then we had, what was commitment number 7? I'm losing my...
Okay.
So now we had 7 commitments, and the decade has come to an end, unfortunately.
Okay, we've been joined by another guest, another panelist. He's a development consultant and economist, Dr. Fred Muhumuza. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy New Year, sir.
It's a pleasure. Happy New Year, by the way.
You just found Agnes taking us through this Kadip and the beginning, the history of Maputo, of Malabo, now Kampala, and the commitments that were set then that government is supposed to go through. One of them is ending hunger, ending malnutrition, putting 10% of the national budget into agriculture. And I'm sure you've been following these things. Do you really think, when we look back in Kampala, do these leaders, are they likely to pat on their shoulders that we did it? Or maybe they're going to face themselves and say, we have failed? Because it looks like, apart from Burundi, that has put in money, and a few other countries, not many have put in the money. But even Burundi that has put money, they seem not to see the dividends in agriculture like they so wished. Your take, Dr. Muhumuza.
Yeah, thank you very much. I also had a commitment to get here by 6.
And you were not on track.
So, the traffic...
Yeah, I'm told it's crazy now.
The other, not that bad, but they're always kind to us if you're moving from a side that have just closed off. So you have to wait until they go the rotation cycle. So it's not their problem, it's not your problem. But also the other roadworks, things are happening. But the point is, you can have a commitment and fail, or be failed. Quite often, most of our governments will say challenges, or failed, or something. Somebody can even look back and say it was COVID, or it was what, all sorts of things. That is one side. So you want to find out where they did not do as they promised, what happened. One of the things that happens is people, when they go for these conferences, they do not have the real decision makers within government. It could be an advocacy group. It can be even government officials, but who are not at the decision-making level. But government is represented. So you come up with quite a lot of commitments that literally are impossible to actually...
Can you ratify them as a government without being at the highest level of government?
You may be required to ratify. So you ratify to be among your peers. The EAC has ratified, the Africa has ratified, so you also get in there. Like the commitment of 10% Maputo Declaration really was a broad thing. It was agriculture and rural development. Now, rural development is a very broad thing. All the rural district roads and community roads are rural development. Rural electrification is rural development. The wells and the boreholes we are doing is rural development. Primary schools in Uganda, that is rural development. It can be so broad and amorphous.
So actually you're saying Uganda could even have put in more and above the 10%? From that calculation.
When they came and computed, we realized we had put in some 35%. But of that, 3% was agriculture. So you can open up.
But wait, Agnes, when they were put, was it agriculture, or agriculture roads, agriculture health, agriculture, all these things?
Because agriculture feeds onto the others as well.
But nothing doesn't feed on the others. That is the unfortunate bit. And I think that was clarified, Doctor, during the concluding decade. That we actually, when we talk about 10%, we are talking about what investments that are directly going into agriculture. Because if we talk about rural roads, even health benefits from them.
Of course.
Even education.
Because they are the same farmers I'm targeting. That farmer needs a health facility. That farmer needs to take their child to that primary school. So me, I'm looking at the whole farmer, that household, which is in agriculture. You know, like when you go to
but Agnes saying this was clarified.
Yeah, even
what they meant was agriculture, not agriculture roads, agriculture.
No, even when you clarify it, look at Lugazi is a sugar plantation, but within there are roads. Now these are not public roads, literally, but they are for the plantation because tractors that are carrying sugarcane need a road.
All right. Hold on to your points, Dr. Muhumuza and Agnes Chirabo. We're going to take a break, and Hotseat will be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hotseat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening, I have Agnes Kirabo, Executive Director, Food Rights Alliance. I have Dr. Fred Muhumuza, Development Consultant and Economist, and we're discussing Kadip Summit, Building Resilient Agri-Food Systems. Agnes, before at the very beginning, you look into Malabo, you look into Maputo and then Malabo, and the results there, if people were to do some kind of appraisal, are not so good. Let me begin with you, Dr. Muhumuza, in this segment. What are your perception that the Kampala Summit will probably help, build resilient agri-food systems in Africa?
Well, thank you. Really, for being involvement consultant, I'm really a lecturer who looks into what are the issues behind. And our approach is right. Because economics is really critical, review, examine all sorts of things. After Maputo, after Malabo, now Kampala needs to be saying, did we even get it right? As we've said, do you just need to throw away the rural development part? You will always have agricultural roads, so they must come in, because every farmer, to get inputs to their farm, they need a road, whether it's a community road, a district road, a village road, whatever it is. So that one will come in. But also these farmers now need water, and now we're talking about water for production. Now in our case, before you even distinguish between water which animals drink and people, you need to first secure that river or that swamp. Now the investments you're going to be making over time. And I'm glad to hear from Agnes' point of view that they are now looking at the systems. We live in a system setting where you can't say now that this is this is the other one. It pays nobody good benefit. If you are going to grow your agricultural produce, get money and spend it paying school fees and health care, and you are not reinvesting into your agricultural system. So the functionality of that healthcare system is as important as the investments we are doing in agriculture, because that will become the cannibal on the agricultural investment. That every time you make some money, you sell the goat to go and treat the child. Then you sell the cow to pay fees. Then 10 years down the road, the agriculture hasn't moved. The malnutrition and all sorts of things. So a systems approach is going to be a very good thing for Kampala to pick up. And I think Kampala is a good place for them to be. I just hope and wish somebody would explain to them the design, leave alone the implementation of the Paris Development Model, the 7 pillars. Remember, this was about subsistence agriculture. But it went into social services, it went into data, it went into community mobilization, it went into public administration, but still focusing on that subsistence agriculturalist.
But Agnes, really, in terms of food production as a country, Uganda, are we really doing bad? Because I remember there was a time when there was a bumper harvest of maize. There's a time now we have a lot of milk. I'm told we're begging Kenyans and others to buy it from us. The Sudanese are rejecting our maize, and we seem, when we're having COVID, food here is very cheap. This country seems to be producing food, Agnes. Do you have a problem with food production?
It is not about Uganda alone. Actually, it is a global phenomenon that millions go hungry, millions are getting obese and overweight, and millions of children are undernourished or malnourished. And this is not necessarily the absence of food, but how the entire system that Dr. Muhumuza is talking about is governed. It is regulated to ensure equity. So I wish to agree with you that actually as we speak now, there is quite a lot of production that is going on. There is quite a lot of yield that is realized, but unfortunately, we are harassing people's investments, we are harassing the environment, and the bulk of this produce go to waste, is lost in post-harvest handling. So these are some of the issues that are being recognized. But despite that fact, we also have another fact that actually we are having factories that are operating at low capacity than expected. I have been talking about the fruit factory in Soroti. I remember the president launching a state-of-the-art abattoir. I don't know if there is any slaughtering that is taking place. I recall when I last saw the president carrying barrels of clothes called to Agoa. I don't know where that one ended. And quite so many other things. So there is a mismatch. Yes, there is quite a lot of food, a lot of produce that is going to waste. But at the same time, because of the infrastructure issues Dr. Muhumuza was talking about, we are not able to add value. The infrastructure that is being put to add value is operating at. So everything is in a mismatch. There is a lot of mismatch.
Is it, Dr. Muhumuza, is it a market issue? Because if people are assured of the market, Ugandans, even the middle income earners, will just get out and go and till the land. We saw that when there was a market in South Sudan, Ugandans were working in, middle income earners just got out of their office and they were cultivating cabbage and onions and tomatoes, and they were making money from South Sudan.
It's actually a mismatch. Selling cabbages and tomatoes in the back of the vehicle is big business in Kenya. The professionals actually have those horticultural businesses, and they bring to the market and sell in their vehicles by the roadside. Now, you want to get to what she's saying, the mismatch. You may actually find surplus food that people have produced, but part of it is because there is low demand. And the low demand is the people in the urban areas who have no gardens, have very low incomes. So they have decided they will eat 1 meal or even half a meal, because we sometimes think a meal is when you sit to eat. The quantity on the plate matters to whether it's a meal or not, and the quality, which is actually now the discussion is on food and nutrition, because the two are separate. You may have food, but really the nutrition is absent, is missing. So you may look like you have surplus, but just because the market, the domestic market in the urban areas, which we have known that should be buying the food, is not there. So even the little that the farmers have produced appears to be surplus. Now sustainability for them also fails, because they are now selling at a very low price. They can't recover. But because they have nothing else to do, they just keep producing. Now, CADAP looks into all these other dynamics, that it's not just food we are talking about, is who is producing. Even the factories is talking about that are at low capacity. Even if you produced what they should grind, they don't just grind. Where am I going to sell? So I can't just buy maize because maize is available. I will first look at my stores are full of what I bought yesterday. I haven't sold it. That day the factory doesn't work. And I've found that commonly in Kampala, the study we've been doing at Mackay University Business School, that most of the maize mills in Kampala operate 2 days a week. Because you're waiting for volume. You don't want to start it when you have 10 bags. So you take this person who brings 10 bags on Monday, come back on Wednesday for your milled portion. Because you're waiting for another one to come on Tuesday, and then Wednesday you have enough. You start the machine, grind and finish. Because some of these machines we bought as government can do actually so many tonnages per hour. So you can't even run it adequately enough for a commercial basis. And that becomes an agricultural problem off the farm, but within the system.
Agnes, there was a time when people would come from Kenya, from Rwanda, from Sudan, and go into people's farms in Muwende and Kibale and wherever, and Kamwenge, and actually book gardens before they mature.
They still do.
They still do.
Yes.
Isn't that a good thing?
It can't be a good thing, because you can't say the flour.
Because you are assured, as a farmer, you're assured of the market there.
Which
You're not
market?
supposed to sell seedlings.
Your intentions, like Doctor said, your intention was not to sell seedlings. Secondly, you cannot sell your produce at flowering. Your crop at flowering.
What I'm trying to say, what it indicates, Agnes, is that the demand is so high that people are ready even to buy before time for harvest. They book the garden.
It isn't the demand necessarily. It is actually exploitation, and an indicator that we do not have a system. Our food trade has no system. Anyone, anyhow, anywhere, anytime can come but some of these things are not happening. Not even in our neighboring countries. Such things are not happening. Let me tell you, if we call that a market. I was in Moyo sometime, and to the surprise of these farmers, they thought that the Congolese are going to come and buy they bought cassava. That is what they were thinking. To their surprise, The owners of the cassava, when they came, they took the tubers, they took the stems, they took the leaves. They were so surprised. So they have taken the stem, which is supposed to be the next seed. And this is why, Doctor, I'm very excited that this time around the declaration, hope it lives, to the reality. It is having a commitment on strengthening the governance of our food system. Things cannot just happen like that, Patrick. It cannot happen. I met other farmers in Ruero around when I was still working at that level. And these farmers were selling flowers of their mango trees. And then they become security. They offer security. What? Because when Patrick bought his flowers, and for him he has made an assumption that flowering will yield so many bags. You remember when we grew up in the communities, we could freely eat mangoes in the neighborhood. Now, Patrick, you sold at almost no cost because you also didn't know what you were selling. But at the same time, you have to provide security. What kind of trade is that one? And how is that one going to translate into real incomes? And then these incomes translate into these households being able to educate their children. So
there's a possibility that somebody will sell their garden, even sleep hungry when they have some food in the garden.
It is always. You will have to sleep hungry. You will have to, because you're not going to steal.
You have sold your soul.
Because it's not your garden.
It is not your garden.
Dr. Muhumuza and Agnes Kirabo, we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's look into the issue of intra-Africa trade. How can that be really turned into reality? We'll be right back. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Kamara. My guest this evening, I have Agnes Kirabo, Executive Director, Food Rights Alliance. I have Dr. Fred Muhumuza, Development Consultant and Economist. We're discussing Cardiff Summit, Building Resilient Agri-Food Systems. One of the commitments in Malabo and Maputo was intra-Africa trade. And Dr. Muhumuza, I think that has been the biggest headache for African governments, to be able to trade amongst themselves. Well, they're going to come to Kampala, assess how much they have moved since the time they met in Malabo. Still, the appraisal here will show very bad results, won't it?
Yeah, of course.
On the commitment of intra-Africa trade.
Of course it will. It is, sometimes Africans speak things that they have not even tried to look through the realities. The other day I was going to Mombasa. I had to go via Addis.
I thought there's a direct flight of Uganda Airlines.
Direct flight to Uganda Airlines, but of course it doesn't fly every day. So me, the day I am going, it's not there. Now, I avoided Kenya Airways, which may have a direct one, because Kenya Airways, my history with it is a complicated one. Now, this is me moving. Now, what if I was moving perishable tomatoes to Algeria and to wherever? By the time you get there, you're competing with the world. I always say the consumer does not owe you a living. They owe themselves a living. So if you're going to move oranges or tomatoes from Uganda, you go via Ethiopia. You have had all these costs of cold storage at Entebbe, I don't know what processing. By the time you get to Algeria, the French have reached there at a quarter the price. The Algerians have a right not to say, this is from an fellow African, this is... No, I have my $20 to buy my family food. The cheapest is what I will take. So we need to appreciate the cost of infrastructure. Look at our coffee. We're talking of coffee, 1.4 billion. Coffee economics, we grew up knowing in Kamas, free on board. You know, you're transacting at Mombasa. But in the 80s, because government had a problem and that problem has persisted, coffee is being traded what we call free on track. The moment the coffee is loaded on the truck in Kampala, the importer takes charge. Because the Ugandan actor can't afford the huge cost of dollars of moving that container from Kampala for you to go and transact in Mombasa. You don't have that money. The interest rates are just too high. The logistical costs are just too high. You want to leave them to this multinational who can manage bulk, because for them they have access to other monies. And now, you're not going to blame that Uganda now. If that is the situation for coffee headed for Europe, because once in Mombasa, it is the sea all the way. But even it's originating from Uganda and you even just want it to Central African Republic, you won't just take it to Congo. Look at the war that is there. I mean, there's so many things.
Congo cannot even trade with herself entirely.
There are so many things of this intra-trade. It is easy to talk, but when you get into the realities of how do I get to South Sudan profitably, it becomes a nightmare.
So how is that commitment, Agnes, you think how do they go about it? Because if we are really going to build our economies, Africa must trade with herself. And
we have the numbers. We are anticipating that by 2050 we are going to be 2.5 billion. Those are 2.5 mouths that are supposed ideally to eat 3 times minimum a day, and we are supposed to eat at least 5 food groups a day. Even if you are to book one food group and you're counting 2.5 billion plates, that would be good enough for us. I look at these commitments as inspirations. And I have been telling people that at African Union level or at Africa level, there is nothing like implementation that takes place. The key question that we have for ourselves is how are these inspirations reflected in our individual country development plans? And beyond the development plans, I told you when we were starting that many people thought that when Cabinet approved the strategic direction, the process of developing the National Development Plan ended. They don't even know what is happening anymore. So I think, one, let us recognize that we need to trade among ourselves because it is cheaper. At least we are still eating anything that looks like what we are looking for. Unlike in Europe where we want to trade.
But Agnes, even in the countries, even the region where the infrastructure is there, transport infrastructure is there are a lot of barriers, non-tariff barriers.
The non-tariff barriers.
There's a lot of politics in that.
It's because of the political sovereignty that I think our leaders are so much trapped into. That political sovereignty, and should I call it ego of some sort? And for me, if we could only agree and act, some of us don't need to do certain things. We do not have the comparative, neither the competitive advantage to do certain things. For instance, if we really be honest to ourselves, that should we really grow rice, for instance, as Uganda, or maybe we can do something else and we leave another country that can competitively produce rice at an affordable price. So there are the non-tariff barriers, there are the infrastructure issues, but also there is the cost of production. The cost of production, nobody knows the cost of seed, nobody can predict the cost of labor. I think one of the hardest things now to find if you're in the agriculture sector is labor. So the cost of production, by the time we compute and tag applies to what we have produced and send it to Kenya, then Egypt would have won us. That's why you find that now we are consuming more juices from Egypt. We are
but that
nothing.
means also people in his place in Toro have guava. But they can't even compete with Egypt. Within Uganda itself, it is easier to drink guava juice from Egypt than guava juice from Kenjojo. So it's not even intra-Africa. You're even talking intra-Uganda. Intra-southern Uganda.
Yeah, and I'm talking about my region. My region is endowed with food, but we have high cases of malnutrition.
Yes.
The kids are malnourished. I don't understand. Is it the knowledge on eating the food groups or what?
That's why you send the food. You send the food. If we have had food diaries with Kabarore Research and Research Center, and we have done some basic research and realized that actually malnutrition in Toro is more in the rural areas where the food is coming from than in Fort Portal where the food is being sent. And interestingly, people sell their eggs and then buy soda. They buy these snacks that are all over the marketplace. So there is the aspect of knowledge, but also there is the aspect of the need to have money in the household. We cannot downplay the issue of the collapse of the rural economy. I'm telling you, an economy, previously food was food, and there were income opportunities, there were income sources that are not there. So when we are talking about these things, even if people wanted to trade among the Batoro themselves, Chenjojo, and whatever trade, they can't. Many of them don't even have the money. So they rather push the food out of their communities to be able to have the little money. So I agree with the doctor that I think, can we agree that we can trade and we boost trade among ourselves, even starting within the country. But unfortunately, our policies and our porous borders, they're allowing in everything. That's why in Fort Portal, I rather take the guava juice all the way from Sudan than eating the guava from Chenjojo.
That is if you get to see the guava from Chenjojo at all. Even if I wanted it, where do I find it?
you can't.
Jamera Jane, they are all over.
And I have to go to Chenjojo. Because me, I will be in Kamocha and say, let me walk into a supermarket.
And you find the guava from Egypt.
Juice. I find one from Egypt and Dubai. So because
the development of the supply chains.
I've seen even the tomato sauce and all these things. They are coming from, ketchup is coming from the United States.
And that's partly the problem. Even there's factories here supposed to be processing our agricultural produce. You'd rather import the pulp from South Africa.
It is cheaper.
Because to collect the mangoes here and the logistics from transport to theft to pests, worms and all sorts of things make it very difficult to engage in the Ugandan sense. Now, we can solve these things. At international level and at regional level, there is protectionism and internationalism. The country is protecting their citizens. Mm-hmm. If Ugandan cheap and low-cost eggs and poultry come to Kenya, my citizens in Kenya, now the East Africa is shelved. As he's saying, can I do better what I am suited best to do? You need to have that at the political level, but as long as politicians are still trying to protect their own, Mr. Museveni, who is Pan-Africanist, is going to suffer with us all suffering with him, because for him, he wants these things flow, which is the right thing that we should be doing. But without that, remember, I wanted to connect roads to Congo to really sell there, apart from the war and other things. But who is looking at these details? I was in Ireland the other day, and I found very nice roads, dual carriage, for kilometers. It was 140 kilometers. And they told me this was built by the European Union in Ireland. Now, where is a road being done? If Uganda wants to do a road to Katuna, it has to be the Ugandan budget. There is nothing like East Africa is doing this budget for East Africa. So you need to get to that level to say, we have gathered money from Germany, you are big and rich, give us some money, we'll go and fix some roads in Ireland. Because this is European Union.
I'm going to be opening the line so that Ugandans who are listening tonight can also have their say. But as we open the lines, Agnes, what does a Ugandan farmer need? What is missing? Because we have the land, we have the arable land, we have been tilling using our indigenous knowledge, and food is there, in some cases, a lot of it. What is missing?
Traditionally, agriculture could be that. It cannot be that anymore. Yeah. We cannot continue doing michanganiko. Because building a supply chain, there is quite a lot that goes into it. The kind of seed that must be planted, how it should be planted, the skills that go with it, the harvesting, the packaging, the loading, the transportation, the processing. There is quite a lot that is supposed to go into that, plus specialization at the various levels to make sure things are done right. But when the farmers are left to try here, try there, we are in try and error. And this is not what the farmers need. The farmers need direction. They need leadership. Even with our little resources, that even when we have not invested 10%, if what we had invested, it was organized investment. Do you know how many of us have pretended to start growing coffee? It's because the coffee subsector seemingly became a little bit more organized than any other subsector in the economy. And this is the kind of leadership the farmers need. The farmers do not need to be told grow oranges, only to be told that the oranges they grew cannot be bought by the factory that was constructed amidst them. That's the kind of leadership we are talking about. But where are the specialized extension workers? Gone are the days that we can have a super extensionist who can do anything anyhow. The markets are demanding for specifications. The markets are demanding for particular standards. The markets are demanding for particular tests. They are demanding for specific things. At the source, we are still generalizing and doing everything. So the market cannot give us the premium from everything. So the farmers, true, they need a market, but we need to know that many of us in leadership, but also among the farmers, we think about the market at the tail end of our production. This is when we realize that actually the market at our disposal cannot buy
Okay.
what we produced.
Let me listen to what Ugandans are saying tonight. I have a call online. Hello.
Yes, Mr. Patrick.
Good evening, sir. Happy New Year. And so what's your take tonight on the issue of building, resilient agri-food systems in Africa?
Yes. Happy New Year to the guests in the studio.
Thank you.
We are talking to Ekode Michael in the center. Two things. One, I want to thank Madam Chair that she has also admitted that there's a very big problem. And when you're going to this conference, requesting whoever's going to attend, we should not only end on taking the cup of tea and maybe and yellow bananas. Please come on the ground and share whatever you have, which you think can add value to the Ugandan, so that we will join you to fight this issue. We don't food that you're saying. But just imagine, people are still even struggling to get a meal a day. And yet you're telling us that we are having a plenty of food in the studio. Someone will question, now what's wrong? Some of the dog, they have cattle. But again, their life is miserable. What's the problem? Two, me, finally, I blame the producers. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of one infrastructure is so bad because we get this product from up country. The cost is too high because of poor roads. By the time you bring your producer to the store so that you can also package to how you can survive. Kampala, then the cost go low. That's what doctor said. We seem to have products or the producers, but you get selling it just to pay school fees, to pay rent, and yourself, you're not even adding anything to yourself.
So much, Michael Code. Let me take another call on. Hello.
Hello, Patrick.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from? And please make it quick.
Byron from Kampala here.
Byron in Kampala. Okay.
And I'm glad that we talked about the systems approach. Over the weekend, I was in my village, deep in Uganda, and I found a gentleman who has 7 tons of onion.
7 tons of onion?
Yes. Doesn't know how to tell them. There was nothing like assistance from government when I was interacting with him, how we got the idea, whether he did the tests of the soil, how good the seed is. It was all about his own initiative. Now, unfortunately, the way he expected the market in Congo is now inaccessible. The harvest is there. Nobody knows, I believe, in government. I don't know how these people can be helped. But
at the time, the Prime Minister saying that she's making a lot of money from onions and that the market is very much available. I'm wondering why is somebody stuck with such volumes of onions in Uganda?
Yeah, she enjoys the benefits of the Gambano concept. Some of us don't have access to such concepts. She has a network. She can use her office and her connections. But look at this young graduate. Graduated 3 years ago. No job in any government or NGO. And he opted for agriculture.
All right. I think that's, I don't know how to call it. Is that one of the is that a good problem? That there's something already but the market is not there. I have a caller. Let me take just one more call online. Hello.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Patrick.
Yes, what's your name, sir, and where are you calling from?
This is Isaac Newton from KIU.
Isaac Newton from KIU. You're on air. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, I'm so grateful to hear about that. But our farmers are all the time, challenged with, long drugs and the market that they use, of course, in their farming, and they end up, getting lost. We've not talked about that. Many farmers, go lost when it comes to fake drugs on the market. Secondly, we have taxation when it comes to high taxes on our products. So many people are getting and trying away from business, especially in agriculture, because of taxes. So I'm also, shocked when I hear, fake drugs in the market, people who go and, buy it and end up, losing at the end.
All right. Okay. I understand. My producers, just give me one more caller. Yes, I have a caller line. Your name? Hello. Oh dear. looks like we have a common challenge to that person getting in touch with us. And I'm still thinking about that gentleman in Uganda with 7 tons of onion and he has nothing. He doesn't know what to do. And if such a thing happens, you have a lot of produce, you have sweated so much, you've invested your money, your time. Chances are you've burnt your fingers, you won't go back. Isn't that the case, Agnes?
You know, we are playing. What is this game where they throw a dice on the table?
Yeah.
Gambling.
We are gambling. There is quite a lot of gambling, and he's not alone. And I was happy that somebody's saying maybe somebody's using the. In this country, all those that think they are successful farmers or the successful producers, it is because their efforts are subsidized and they enjoy the connections and the information, and we cannot develop that way. That's why I was saying we must be committed at the highest political level, and we give leadership and direction, and the system works. That farmer should not have a burden because she invested. This country is equally benefiting from that farmer's produce. But where is the country's infrastructure and systemic support? So everybody is gambling, and we are gambling here and we are gambling there. So for me, it is actually that farmer is in more trouble than the farmer who never produced anything. And that is why many farmers in this country cannot access credit. It is not because of the absence of credit. They know that they cannot do their proper cash flows and be sure to predict that they are not even going to lose the little that they had. So it is quite very unfortunate, and this is what we are crying out to. 2025 is a very critical year. 2025 is 5 years away from Africa being declared to be 2.5 billion people. 2025 is a determinant year for Uganda in who is going to be in leadership and which kind of leadership we are anticipating to have. 2025 was the target year for the SDG 2, but we are also having 5 years to the completion of the Agenda 2030. So 2025 is everything that we must do. If we continue doing business as it were, then I think we are all best candidates of Butabika.
We're crazy.
Yes.
Dr. Fred Muhammad, I could imagine agriculture is such a low-hanging fruit for Uganda that our leaders would actually take it that way and seek the opportunity and seize it, because this is one thing that is within our means. The arable land, the young people.
The committed farmers.
And you don't have to put in so much in terms of production, and then nobody can even compete with you. But it looks like our leaders are not even getting it.
Possibly that is also the problem, because when it is so low hanging, everybody thinks it will just be there. Why bother it? Because sometimes picking low hanging things, people take them for granted. Agriculture, first of all, is a science. These are living organisms. They are animals, they are plants. I was the other day talking with the person who handles the tea auction in Mombasa, and we were discussing about the Ugandan tea. The man literally he's not looking at tea as a plant. He's saying this is a bush. The quality of the tea is how do you look at the bush, look after the bush. Coffee is a tree. You are not calling it a coffee, but it's literally a tree. How do you look after this tree so that it can flower and put on the right seed, which is what you call the coffee bean? So if that science is not with the farmer, the culture, the business, the livelihood. So agriculture is so many things to people. There are people in agriculture for a livelihood. To eat, sell, and go and pay their fees.
Right.
And we are not supporting most of these individuals.
Dr. Muhammad, what's going to be your concluding remark tonight?
I think we need to be looking through the governance, as he has said. Now, like this particular, the onion fellow, is like when you wanted to compensate the Sudan traders, because he targeted the market which was there. It is a Congo market. Now, because of the war, he can't reach it. Now, how do you help such a person? Those are kind of the risks in agriculture, but it will not be deterrent, because if we plan better, we can be able to address them. And also look at the initiatives we have put in place, supporting the commercial farmers and saying government will pay interest for you. Really, I sometimes think we are not looking after the very vulnerable, the small-scale farmer.
All right.
And we are targeting the bigger ones.
Agnes, in 30 seconds, your concluding remark tonight.
I just wish to inform the listeners that for the next decade, the very reference that is going to be made in as far as agriculture transformation in Africa is going to be Kampala. It will be unfortunate that after the decade, we people whose capital is Kampala, we are worse off than we were. Implementation is not done at African Union level. I encourage you to ensure that these inspirations that are going to be made in the declaration in Kampala are actually reflected as priority actions in your district development plan, in your PDM action plans, and things like that. This is what we need on the ground. Otherwise, it will be business as usual. Agnes
Kirabo, Executive Director, Food Rights Alliance, I want to thank you so much. Dr. Fred Muhumus, a development consultant, the economist, I want to thank you. And for those of you who have been listening and those who have called in, I want to thank you for the privilege of your company, and Happy New Year. Good night and God bless Uganda.